If you create a space that represents what people see around them in their work, they will feel much more comfortable being productive. They'll be able to do more at work. It will have a direct correlation. Building it from scratch, building out a team, getting very talented people together to work on very complex problems in the recruiting field, in IT, and then being a female and a storyteller in the space has only just been an asset. There are not enough women in almost every field, and that is affecting research. It's affecting healthcare. It's affecting mortality rates of mothers. It's affecting the biological sciences of how diseases are diagnosed.
Hi all, good morning. So today I have Tulika Mehrotra with us, a diversity expert and the only female C-suite executive at Peterson Technologies, which is based in Chicago. So Tulika will be speaking with her about her journey as a diverse woman and in the workplace and what needs to change when it comes to making workplaces much more equitable for women across all different industries. Hi Tulika, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, Talika, can you tell us about your journey? You are part of a C-level executive, which women will be very much inspired from. So, can you tell us about your journey, how you got there?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for that. So I am the Chief Digital Officer at Peterson Technology Partners, and we're a IT recruiting and consulting firm. My career background is very non-traditional and a little bit more unique than somebody who maybe took a more linear path. So I started out in finance. That was my education. I was a finance graduate, but I ended up getting a master's degree in design in Milan, Italy. And so that redirected me to New York, where I worked in the fashion industry for a little while. And I got, bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. And so at the time, Netflix was just starting to flirt with the whole streaming, which is now the only way we consume media. But if you remember back then, we were getting DVDs in the mail and returning them, right? And so they were starting to flirt with it. And I had a great, in my opinion, a great business idea about being an aggregator of long tail content, which was, documentaries, foreign films, things that people couldn't easily access other than studio films. And so I built a business plan. I bootstrapped it. I tried to raise funds. I got partners. I spent 3 years really working on that. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. It was a tremendous experience learning about business and then failure, which is in itself a great lesson. And so I ended up pivoting over to a startup, a VC-backed startup, who I was introduced to by one of my VC advisors for my company. And so I ended up working in Los Angeles for about 4 years. Where I was working in a disruptive technology for animation, especially as it related to children's animation. It was an amazing experience. And at the time, I was starting to think about what else could give me purpose, give me that sense of purpose in work, in life. So I started writing. I've always been writing poetry and short stories just for myself. And so I started writing. And I took a research trip to India. And on that trip, I ended up meeting my agent and a couple potential publishers, editors. And a few months later, on July 4th of 2011, I believe, I ended up getting a multi-book deal with Penguin India.
Wow.
So fast forward, I've published a couple books with Penguin. They became bestsellers in South Asia. I thought I would be a full-time author, but the problem with people who are very right left brain, you cannot just do one thing. And so I was writing, but I was also starting to consult. I was getting clients who were reaching out to me and saying, hey, we have this business, we have a branding issue. Can you help us kind of find that intersection of storytelling and business? And so for me, it was just very easy I had learned how to build the architecture of a fiction novel, and I understood the business world, especially with the 2 startup experiences that I had. And so I started a consulting firm. In that consulting firm, I got a number of clients, and then Peterson came in 2018. I'm also a mom, and I was about to become a mom in 2018. And so consulting was a very easy. It was a manageable feat. And Peterson wanted me to help build a team from the ground up, a creative design studio, writing studio, digital marketing studio from the ground up. And so the last 4 years has been an evolution of building it from scratch, building out a team, getting very talented people together to work on very complex problems in the recruiting field, in IT, and then being a female and a storyteller in the space has only just been an asset. So that's my long answer to your quick question, but that's how I ended up here.
Oh, well, you've definitely had a diverse range of experiences from starting off with finance, then going to Italy for your degree, coming back, starting your own startup, which turned out to be a failure, but it seems like you learned so much, after which you worked with different industries, and now you're a chief digital officer at a company that is fairly doing well. So thank you so much for sharing that, Tulika. I think a follow-up question to Rika would be is a lot of people are always very scared to start their own startup, and especially with minimal resources. So can you tell us about your journey regarding how you started your own startup, whether it was with minimal resources, how it came into actually existence, and what was something that you learned from that that you could have done differently at that point after
Ah,
years of experience, of course?
yeah, of course, of course. So I think I did not have resources. It was my savings. It was myself bootstrapping everything. I did the taxes myself, literally learned everything so I could do everything. And I think there's a naivete of in your 20s where you think you can do everything. That what's so hard about accounting and strategy and execute, and you think you can really do it. And so I would say that one of the biggest lessons that I learned is bring in the subject matter experts. Do not try to do everything yourself. You will stretch yourself too thin as an entrepreneur. There will always be fires. There will always be fires. There will never be a moment where you'll say, "Oh, yes, now I'm there." So you need the partners, whether they are freelance, whether they are consultants, whether they are partners, but you need to bring the subject matter experts in. I do recommend starting as lean as possible. Do not try to raise an insane amount of money and then just spend it all. That doesn't make any sense. Try to stay as lean as possible because it allows you to be much more flexible, right? And that's something that most great businesses, including Peterson right now, that's something that we still do. You want to try to stay flexible because there will be unpredictable twists and turns and then potentially failure, right? And so if you have sunk all of your savings or all of your investment into it, how do you recover that, right? So you want to make sure to hedge possible success with survival as well. So my takeaway for the couple years that I put in was give it your all. Don't take any shortcuts. Give it your all. Do everything you can to make it succeed. But when and if it doesn't, be able to survive that. Right? Because what I got out of my failure was tremendous, a huge network of VC advisors, partners, people who were interested in what I was doing, people that wanted to help me. And so, in a way, that was the success that I got out of the business that didn't take off on its own.
Oh, well, that's wonderful advice, because I think there's always this preconceived notion that you can almost do everything, but then again, you always need help from other people, and you should always, if you do start a startup, you need to understand there's always a risk, and it could fail, but what you take out from it could be greatly inspiring, that it could change your life. So thank you so much for sharing that. So, Ika, my next question for you would be centered around diversity.
Mhm.
I've seen that diversity has been a core forefront in your career. You've been an advocate for it. So, why specifically is diversity so important to you, especially right now at your current position as well, where you specifically highlight and bring in diverse teams?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great question, and I think it's something that is top of mind for a lot of organizations and a lot of companies universally. Not having women, LGBT, anyone in a minority population or demographic, not having them be a part of your leadership or your employee talent pool, it's just a disadvantage. You're putting your own organization at a disadvantage. The reason that it's been really important for me is the more research and data and studies that I'm seeing, there are not enough female scientists. There are not enough women in private equity. There's not enough women in finance. There are not enough women in almost every field. And that is affecting research. It's affecting healthcare. It's affecting mortality rates of mothers. It's affecting the biological sciences of how diseases are diagnosed. Seatbelts are not even built for women. It's only been recently that it's been understood that female biology is just completely different. And so for me, it's just very important, not just on a direct, hey, this is a direct correlation, but on the indirect culture, where you really need to build acceptance and equity in your organization. We work in IT. IT is predominantly male, right? And so being a female in IT and to have the honor to work in recruiting, to be trusted with building teams for Fortune clients, and we work with only Fortune clients with $1 billion in revenue or more. And so these are organizations that will move the needle if their talent pools shift towards more women or more minorities or whatever. It will have a ripple effect going forward, and that to me is just the domino effect of that is just tremendous. Not to mention the culture effect. If you create a space that represents what people see around them in their work, they will feel much more comfortable being productive. They'll be able to do more at work. It will have a direct correlation to the bottom line. Creating that psychological safety at work only benefits the employer, right? There's no downside to it at all. And in the long term, they will win the war on talent. Whether it's a war or if it's just a competition for talent, they're still going to win. If you put diversity at the forefront, it's going to be the winning formula.
I think a lot of people usually think that it's mostly an emotional debate, but just the way you spoke about it, just the way you based your argument based on evidence, which is based on studies specifically itself, showcases how important it is to make the workforce much more diverse, to make sure that women can be equally represented, rather than looking at people from their gender, their religion, or their culture. Look at what they bring to the table. Look at what their thoughts are. Look at what their opinions are, which is the most important thing. So thank you so much for sharing that, Tulika. Talika, my last question would be is you've had a beautiful career. Your thoughts are very inspiring. Your work has been very inspiring. So what is one piece of advice you might have for people, especially because a lot of people are being laid off these days? Every day you go on LinkedIn, there's a post that this company laid off one-fourth of their workforce. So what is one key piece of advice that you might have for people who were laid off recently?
That's a wonderful question, and thank you for asking that. And it is a very emotional time for a lot of people, and I can respect that, and I can absolutely appreciate the shock that many people must be facing right now, especially in IT. And what I would request and I would recommend that you try to do is take it as an opportunity to pivot, take it as an opportunity to learn and to grow. There's somebody who I know personally who was recently laid off, and the first thing I said was, congratulations. This is your time to really, really introspect and investigate what you really want to do, right? Because a lot of times we end up on a hamster wheel and we're just I don't want to say comfortable because most corporate jobs require some level of challenge, but there is a level of I will do this and just, it'll work out. And when you're put in an uncomfortable situation like a layoff, it truly forces you to look inside and say, what do I want to do? And I think it's a golden opportunity for you to really think about what's next. Now, of course, there's bills to be paid, kids have to go to school. There's an intersection of I need to, solve these problems and I would like to do these things. And I think there's a happy medium where anyone who has been impacted can try to find that balance of reinvention and also making sure that they have what they need. But my advice would be take it as an opportunity. Do not take it as a negative. Take it as something to celebrate and to find a new direction. There's a lot of tech talent that is starting to pivot to entrepreneurship. They're going back to school. They're going into different lines of business. They're getting certified. They're going into finance. They're going into real estate. Like they're taking their tech background, which, by the way, makes them incredible assets because they have this tremendous knowledge, but they're taking it into a different area. Smaller companies are benefiting. They're having to really compete for this phenomenal talent, but when you join a smaller company, you have a bigger voice. So there's huge opportunities that should be explored, and I think anyone who has been impacted, I'm very sorry in the moment, but I'm also very excited about what they decide to do for their next chapter.
Yeah, I mean, you put it beautifully. I think when one door closes, there's going to be plenty of doors that open along the way. So I'd like to summarize it with that. But thank you so much, Tulika, for coming on, for sharing your wonderful journey, your passion for diversity, your passion for helping other people, and your advice for other people would be very useful, especially for people who were recently impacted by layoffs, because it's very easy to get demotivated, but you always, I mean, that's that. You can't go away from that. So I think introspecting, thinking about where I can go from here is always very important. And you summarize that beautifully. Thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing your wonderful thoughts and your wonderful journey. And I wish you all the best and more success that is to come to you.
Likewise to you. Thank you so much for having me, Mino.